Hi everyone, I'm excited. I've got Joe Morgan with me today. I used to teach with Joe at the Portsmouth Grammar School. A fantastic teacher. She's now CEO and founder of Engendering Change. She's got a brilliant book out at the minute as well called Empowering Relationships and Sex Education. So, what Joe and I thought we'd talk about this morning is how we can, if you like, encourage our boys to look at different types of masculinity, if you like, and especially with a lot of our sporty boys, they can be easily led in one way or the other. So thanks first of all for coming on, Joe. And how do you think we can help our boys, explore their masculinity?
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's a really interesting question, and I think it's one which all educators and parents and society are grappling with at the moment. How do we respond to the resurgence in some ways of quite rigid norms around masculinity and femininity, what it means to be a man, what it means to be a successful man, what the dynamics are between men and women. And we've seen the rise of a lot of very misogynistic content online. We've seen a lot of problems around young people being exposed to pornography from a really early age, a lot of which is reinforcing very dated notions of gender stereotypes and male dominance, female subservience, quite degrading acts and so on. So there's a lot going on for young people, which leaves us all wondering, what are we going to do about this? Because a lot of us hoped and thought that gender equity and our fight for that was going in one direction, which is that things are becoming more equal, it's getting better. And actually, recent studies with Gen Z young people, or young people as I call them, has indicated that many young men in particular actually feel that feminism has gone too far. And about a quarter of them think that it's harder to be a man now than it is to be a woman. So against that backdrop, I think, we're left now wondering ourselves as adults and educators, how can we help young people to navigate this space? Increasingly, young men are feeling quite alienated by attempts to address misogyny and rape culture and people like Andrew Tate and so on. And so when educators attempt to address this and young men respond by perhaps feeling more alienated by those attempts or becoming more tribalized in that thinking, we've got to really reevaluate how we're approaching this. So understanding what masculinity is, the language that we use about it, and how we tap into the psychology of young men to help them to get on board with our ultimate aims, which is to promote gender equity, to help them to be good men, to behave well towards each other and towards women. I think we've got to really help them to understand what positive masculinity looks like. And our approach towards it needs to be one which wins them over rather than further entrenches that sense of alienation or feeling attacked and becoming defensive.
So if I'm a director of sport, how can I role model that behavior first of all? So if we look at that and then look at how maybe what we can do with boys and what we can do with girls at school. So first of all, I'm a director of sport, an independent school, mixed school. How can I role model those behaviors for the boys?
I think adopting an inclusive approach is really important, but actually clearly defining and understanding and modeling inclusivity in a way that's effective. So quite often attempts to do that actually end up excluding certain ways of thinking. So for example, you might get a school who decides, and I have experienced this with my own children, they decide that they're not going to award those who win sporting competitions in the way that they used to. And the thinking, I guess, is that, that becomes more inclusive to children who are less sporty or, don't get that sort of win. What that does, though, is it marginalizes the winner. And quite often I see in attempts to become inclusive, rather than bring more people in, it excludes the other group. So, for example, sorry, Chris, that's my dog barking at the cat. Sorry about that. Right, she stopped. So, for example, a lot of women often feel offended when talking about what it means to be a woman or women's spaces, if they feel as women that they are being marginalized in favor of another group, for example, non-binary or transgender people. So my approach to inclusivity is not about excluding any group, it's about bringing everyone in. And so when it comes to sports and someone leading sports, what I would say is look for more opportunities to award success and to recognize what leadership looks like, what it looks like to be a winner. Yes, winning the actual competition, but also someone who's shown incredible leadership skills, someone who picked someone up when they'd fallen down, someone who has made the effort to speak to someone who feels like they are really struggling, you know. And so finding those opportunities and celebrating them as publicly and with as much status and legitimacy as other types of winning or other types of masculinity is one way to go about that.
And I think that's really healthy. We talk a lot about there are multiple benefits and success criteria of playing sport. And of course, winning is one of them, but you've just highlighted a few there as well. And I think if we want those type of behaviors in our schools, then as you say, we have to reward them. Okay, so that's what I can do as a director of sport to role model those behaviours. What can we do to help our sporty boys? Well, all of our boys. What can we do to encourage all of our boys to embrace this?
I think listen to them, first of all. Quite often, I work with lots of boys in lots of different schools, and quite often they are feeling at the moment that they're being lectured and attacked and told what to think and told what to do, and feel that the emphasis is that they're wrong.
Mm.
And whilst that's often not the intention of the people delivering those messages, actually that's the way it's being experienced. And so I think what we've got to do is give boys space to talk, and we've got to create space to really listen to them and tap into what their concerns are, what their struggles are, and find creative ways of helping them to navigate their way through that. And you know, sometimes sporting opportunities can provide the best way to do that. You know, that we all know that, you know, walking side by side with a boy rather than sitting down and facing him tends to be a much more effective way to getting him to talk. And your relationship that you have with your students may be that opportunity and that kind of dynamic that will give them ways to open up and talk about whatever it is that they're feeling or struggling with, or perhaps feeling that sense of alienation and not really fitting in or being valued. And if we can really prove to them that we are listening and we do care, we are so much more likely to win over their hearts and minds and help them to become great men.
And you're right, in sport, we do have those opportunities. And in mixed schools, a lot of the time, the sports teams are single sex. So my rugby team, my hockey team, my football team. So I've had many a great conversation on a minibus where I'm driving and I'm at the front and I'm having that conversation with, you know, boys behind me or on a coach. And sometimes we do, or after training, at the end of training, when we're on the back field and it's just us and something's come up. So I think sports teachers do get those opportunities to have those conversations more than maybe other staff. And what about our girls, Joe? What can we do with girls to again encourage this?
Yeah, I think again, girls are facing so many barriers potentially to their own flourishing. And so we need to have a really targeted and gendered approach, I would argue, which isn't going to fit everyone, but there are issues which are far more pertinent to boys than those which are more pertinent to girls. So one of the things which I really work on with young women and indeed older women is helping them to tap into their power and unleash their power. Because quite often what we find is not only are we holding ourselves back as women and girls, but we can often be holding each other back too. So girls are often kind of socialized into feeling that they have to compete with each other,
Mm.
and that, you know, by putting down you know, one of their female peers, that they might then rise above them in the kind of social ranks. And we can see that following into the workplace as well. You know, with in some workplaces, female colleagues feeling extremely competitive and threatened by each other in a way that's actually really counterproductive to everyone's success. And so, if you haven't heard of the hype woman movement, really kind of popularized by Erin Gallagher, who's an American CEO, I would really recommend you to have a look at it. And this all became viral when she shared a photo at the Oscars of Jamie Lee Curtis screaming and whooping in joy when Michelle Yeoh, her co-star, won an Oscar. And it's the ultimate hype woman photo. You know, she is, the joy she feels at her female colleague's success is so incredible. And what Erin Gallagher talks about is how this kind of dynamic of us really holding each other back and ourselves back has become a tool for the patriarchy to keep women down.
Yeah.
And once we realize the power that we have in ourselves and in each other, by lifting each other up, we all rise together. And so talking to girls about that and helping them to tap into that, I think, is an incredibly powerful thing. And so, you know, really lends itself to your context.
And of course, in sport, especially in team sport, collaboration, cooperation, teamwork is vital. And I've actually just reflected, I don't know if you've seen the picture of Simone Biles in the Olympics when she won the silver medal, and there she is to Andrade, the Brazilian who won, bowing down to her. And there's
Yeah,
the greatest, possibly
amazing.
Olympian, but definitely gymnast of all time, as you say, celebrating the success of one of her peers, she was also
Yeah.
desperate to beat, but still had the good grace to celebrate, that woman's success as well. It's powerful, isn't it? So, well, that's brilliant, Joe. Thanks very much for that. And as I say, I'll put a couple of links in the with the video so you can follow Joe. But really appreciate your time today, Joe, and let's catch up soon.
All right. Thank you, Chris. Great to see you.